You know, a lot of people say that when blacks talk about racism, we either misunderstood or been whiners or it's all in our head. Well, I'm going to show y'all how modern America really is if y'all don't know already.
So tell me, you lived here for 30-something years. They're classifying this fire as a potential hate crime. What do you think about that?
I think that if people just stayed in their own side of town, their own neighborhood, that things like that wouldn't happen.
Tell me what you mean by that.
Well, every race and color has their own section of Buffalo almost, so if they just stay on their own side, things like this wouldn't happen. People in these neighborhoods don't want those type of people moving down here and ruining the property value and destroying the neighborhood, so when things like that happen, it shouldn't be such a shock.
What do you mean by those types of people?
Minorities. African Americans.
So are you suggesting that they should stay on the east side rather than coming here to South Buffalo?
Well, they've already wrecked the east side. Why should they come down to the south side and wreck that neighborhood?
Do you think that by saying these things, people on the other side of the city get offended? Do you think that there's some sort of a bias, potentially?
A lot of people feel this way. They just won't say it.
But you are.
Yeah.
Why are you coming out and saying these things?
Because I own a home and I see what happens when they move into the neighborhood. Property value goes down, kids on the corner, crime goes up. The east side used to be a beautiful place. Look what they did to that.
Do you think that there's an issue, though, in what you're saying?
Well, I'm sure there is, but, I mean, you got to take a look at why it's an issue.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, they just ruin neighborhoods.
I guess what I'm getting at is that you're generalizing tremendously. These people might have just been here looking for a different way of life, a better way of life.
Maybe people are afraid after you let one family in, then more of them come in. You know, that's just how it is around here.
Right. Do you think there's anything wrong with what you're saying?
I don't feel there's anything wrong with it. A lot of people would feel wrong about it, but I don't.
Now, looking at this guy, like the typical arrogant, smug look white guy. Now, I'm going to tell you something. When we see images like this, or hear people say things like this, I should say, first thing somebody come and do and say you misinterpret, or you too sensitive, or there's some truth to that. First of all, let's talk about black communities and why they are the way they are, and why white communities are the way they are. A lot of people tend to forget how nasty white people can be and what they've done within certain communities. A lot of the communities that were once considered white were never truly white. Okay? A lot of the communities that blacks have moved into that was considered white were falling apart anyways. Let me give you an example. Now, y'all know I'm from the Chicagoland area. And being from Chicagoland area, I'm into architecture. I love reading architecture things. I love old buildings. I love hearing about the history of the city. There were certain parts of the city of Chicago that blacks were regulated to. Blacks lived on top of each other. White men and white women owned buildings that they took the rent from the black tenants but never put the money back into the properties. So eventually, after a while, it became a danger for some of the housing conditions they lived in. And this was all the way up until the 1960s. People need to realize they ain't been that long ago, okay? So naturally, some brothers and sisters start to say enough is enough. We're human beings. We're taxpayers. We built this country. We have more rights and stuff in this country than most people do. So people start marching different parts of the city. Some people went on certain parts of the south side. It wasn't until maybe like the 1980s where you had this really intense, maybe late 70s, where you had certain areas of whites, groups of whites running out of certain parts of the south side. But for the most part, the west side stayed pretty segregated. But during the 1950s and 60s, there was a large contingent of Jewish people, which you consider the Humboldt Park, K-Town, Austin area, and whatnot. And they realized they wanted to go to the suburbs because after World War II and the Korean War, the suburban areas was in heavy development. This is why most of these newer model homes were built in the 50s and 60s. You can tell by their design. Well, they started running up north or out to these different suburbs. But guess what? The real estate had to sell them homes. So what they did, they sold them to the black community, with people within the black community, overcharged, inflated the price of the home, or the whites that were still in the neighborhood, they scared them. Said, your property values are going to let blacks move in. Well, some who stayed as long as they could, so those who left, and then you had black men and black women who had well-paying jobs or good-paying jobs or stable jobs wanting to move into a place of their own. Backyard, front lawn, and brothers and sisters took care of their properties. But there were always going to be a group of brothers and sisters or people who are uneducated or have not been used to things. Eventually, they're going to come into a community. Because we don't discriminate against our own people. Now, this is going to sound crazy coming from me. Maybe we should be a little bit more discerning, but hey. So naturally, the people who still own the properties did what they've always done. They took the money but never reinvest back into the properties. This is why we got Dr. King to come here in 1966. This is why he lived on the west side of Chicago. And it's on the internet. Dr. King paid more for, I think, a 3 or maybe 2 or 3 bedroom apartment than most white folks pay for brand new buildings and apartments. And old Rotten Ass, Mary Daley, the daddy, not the son, not Junior, he and Chicago Police and these other aldermen did everything they power to sabotage that movement. Y'all remember Dr. King said he never saw racism like he saw here in Chicago. He's from the South. He's seen Southern racism. But the racism here is so different. This is why I tell people. People say, why you talk about racism? Like, living in the Midwest, you see a lot of it. A lot of it, they smile in your face, but they stab you in the back or shoot you in the back in this case. But nonetheless, the black community was deprived of certain resources. Poor policing, poor housing, schools are falling apart. And as I said before, these things are falling apart when the brothers and sisters moved in the community. So the black men and black women who did have the money were able to move into these communities. Maybe they made 1 or 2. Or if they couldn't move, they were stuck. So the city neglected certain communities for years. And after a while, you condition people to live and act a certain way. Then after a while, when certain suburban communities the population started to get old, they moved to other states, or they started building, they need to sell them homes. So they didn't care. Whoever can afford it then, they can move in. So the brothers and sisters who can move out, they moved out. And the ones who couldn't, the ones who were not educated or been exposed, they stayed in. So you have this endless cycle of people coming in our community, doing all kinds of shit. And those of us, or those who are weak-minded, allowing it. So when this guy said they destroy communities, it's a little bit more complex than that, my friend. But he sits back with a smug ass and think that he's better than somebody. I've known white folk that got the front lawn manicured, the backyard looking nice, got the car somewhat looking nice. But if you peek into their homes or go in, it's like a pigsty. We've seen TV shows where people on the outside of their homes look okay and go in like, what the hell happened here? This is why I get frustrated with our people, that we can have nice things in our community. I don't want to, like I said before, I don't have to go into a community where somebody don't want me there or don't appreciate me or respect me and give them money where they can build their infrastructure. But we've let a few idiots run wild in our community. Now we're afraid to go into certain stores or certain businesses in our community. So what happened, the black man and black woman got a business or want to grow something in the community, they just shut the doors because it's too dangerous or they're not making enough profit. So what happened? The building falls in disrepair. If nobody comes in, open a storefront or try to fix it up, it rots out and they had to tear it down. So you left up with vacant lots. Then after a while, when the city come in and say, we're going to gentrify, these developers going to come in, they push us out into the suburbs that everybody got they wear out of. Now we're in the suburbs fractured. They're in the city all together. And we're wondering why we're behind. This video, what this man said should tell you, this is what they think. Not all, but enough.